Welcome back, everybody, to another C3 Gaming episode. I'm C3DG Minecraft.
And I am CD3 Daddy. You'll notice that we are in a different world. That's because our last world was getting a little crazy and a little cramped, so we have completely wiped it, and we are trying to organize a little bit better. We were in the process of recording some touch-ups for our moss storage tutorial. That video is coming soon, so stay tuned for that. However, a user in our Discord reached out to me and asked me if I had seen the price drop of the pickles. And I had not. It was not a surprise. We knew it was coming. However, he also said, did you see the price of the fungus and the roots? And so I jumped onto Donut really quickly, and I saw that fungus, the crimson roots, and the warped roots were now $5. I have had a fungus farm for a long time, and I've been dying to build it, but it just was not worth it in Donut SMP. So we are going to go ahead and bring that tutorial to you early, just in case they nerf those prices, because this farm is way OP. You are going to make millions. All right, we're going to just jump right into it. The build area is going to be contained inside a 16 by 17 outline, and it is going to be a total of 12 farms. This is going to be an extremely tiny farm for the amount of items that you are going to be producing. We are going to find the side that is 17 long, and we are going to drop down into the corner. Again, if you need a border to help you build, that is great, but just know that anytime you need to count off, you can just do so from whatever your starting point is. I am going to place a block directly catty-corner from my corner block. On that block, towards my corner, I am going to place a lever, and I'm going to flip it on. I am going to place some redstone dust, 2 pieces. I'm going to place a repeater on a 4-tick. I am going to place another solid block. And on the face of the solid block, I'm going to place a redstone torch. Because I have a lever turned on powering the solid block, it is going to toggle it into the off state. Directly in front of my redstone torch, I'm going to place a sticky piston with a note block in front of it. What we are doing is we are going to create the foundation for our farm that we will build off of, and this farm will be very similar to our moss and pickle farms, where we build the entire clock underneath it. That way, if you ever wanted to go back after the fact and add more modules, you can do so without having to break down your clock and rebuild it. Now, directly in front of our note block, when the sticky piston is fully extended, we will have a gap that we are going to leave when the sticky piston is retracted. So skip a block, and on the front side of that block, we're going to place an observer with the redstone output facing towards the sticky piston. Directly in front of that gap, we are going to place another observer, this time with the face looking at the empty space. And then we're going to wrap around and connect the 2 observers together. 1, 2, and 1. What this is, it is a 5-tick clock that is enabled and disabled with the lever over here in the corner. So if I flip the lever, you'll see that we have a 5-tick clock, and this is similar to all of our other repeater and comparator clocks. This one is just a little bit easier to toggle, and you'll see what I'm talking about when we get to the actual farm. This is going to be the heart of the farm, because obviously that is the clock. On the side of the observer, with the redstone output facing opposite of your lever, we are going to place a solid block. And directly next to our solid block, opposite of our lever, we're going to place 1, 2, 3 rails, an observer, and following it up with a final rail, and then extend that rail 1 block to the right. To the left of your rail, and these are activator rails. They can be powered rails if you would prefer, but activator rails will work just fine, but they cannot be a detector rail or normal rails. They do need to be powered or activator. Directly to the left of those rails, you're going to place a solid block. Move over to the opposite side of the farm, and on the front of the observer where the redstone output is showing, we are going to place another solid block. We are going to walk back more activator rails, 1, 2, 3, and 4. In front of that rail, we're going to place an observer with the redstone output facing towards you, and finishing it up the same way we did on the opposite side with an activator rail, and then moving away from our lever, a second activator rail. And just to see if everything is working, we're going to flip on our lever, and you'll see that we now have a 5-tick clock that is powering the observers alternating on either side. You'll find that the steps that we're going to be taking are very, very similar to our pickle farms, and that's because this is going to be a shifting floor farm. It is going to be very similar to the Duck V3. Just because pickle prices have dropped does not mean that pickle farms are worthless. They are just worth less. So if you want to familiarize yourself with some of the things that we are doing here, that is a great tutorial. Now, on the side that is not the note block, because this note block will fill this gap, but on the side of the observer with the redstone output still exposed, we are going to place another solid block. And this is where things are a little different. We are going to grab a dropper, and we're going to place the dropper facing towards you with the backside connected to the solid block. We are going to place a hopper into the dropper. Now, I will explain this in more detail as we build out the farm, but this is going to be a counter. Next to our hopper, we're going to place a target block. And then in front of your dropper and your hopper, we're going to place a comparator. In front of both, we're going to place solid blocks in front of both of the comparators. And then we're going to place a redstone torch on both sides of your solid blocks. Now, directly on top of the solid block in front of your dropper, we are going to place another redstone torch. And then we are going to place 2 pieces of redstone dust, one between the 2 redstone torches on the solid block, and then 1 piece of redstone dust between the burned out torch and the target block. Now, we can do this now, or we can do it later, but we're going to open up the dropper, and we are going to place 20 items. It doesn't matter what items they are, as long as they are stackable, so you can't put a non-stackable item in here, but place 20 items inside of the dropper. Whenever we turn the farm on, the dropper will dispense an item into the hopper will be locked, and the dropper will continue to dispense items every single pulse. And once the dropper is empty, the hopper will empty back into the dropper and start the clock counting all over. And again, that will make sense as we build out the rest of this farm. Now, the next thing we're going to do between the solid block and the observer, we are going to place a glass block. And then we're going to place a bunch of redstone. We're going to place 1 redstone dust in front of the burned out torch. We're going to carry it all the way over on top of our 2 observers next to our glass. We are going to place a solid block opposite of the glass with redstone dust on top. We are going to place down a repeater on a 1 tick. And then we are going to place a solid block, 2 more pieces of redstone, and then we're going to build up a little staircase, which will be used on the opposite side of the farm. We're going to do 3 solid blocks, followed by 2 solid blocks. Place redstone dust on the first steps, and on the last solid block, we're going to place a repeater, leaving it on a 1 tick. Now, on the side of the farm with your lever, we are going to place some more redstone components. We're going to place a comparator, catty corner from our glass. We're going to turn and face the opposite direction with another comparator facing into the redstone dust line. Opposite of the redstone dust, we're going to place a solid block in front of the comparator that has the single redstone torch facing towards the lever. We are then going to connect our the back of our comparator next to our solid block all the way until we are back to where we started. That was a lot in a very little amount of time. We're trying to keep this relatively short. If your farm looks like this, you are doing everything absolutely correct. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to build up a platform on the opposite side of your repeater, and it is going to be very similar. We are going to, instead of carry a straight redstone line all the way across, we are going to place a solid block directly behind the comparator with the 2 redstone torches connected to our redstone line. On the outside of your farm, opposite of your lever, we are going to place 3 solid blocks. We're going to turn back, place 1 final solid block, and then we are going to walk up redstone dust all the way until we get to this final solid block, which we are going to place a repeater on a 1 tick. You'll see that both sides are going to have a repeater, and they are going to be 1 block shy of your build border. If your farm looks like this, then you are ready for the next step. Now, before we start on our the core modules of our farm, we're actually going to start building out our water collection system. And the reason we want to do that now is because it will be very difficult to reach after the fact. But you only have to build this out once because all of the items will be funneled into the water stream. So the easiest way to do this is find the repeater next to the solid block by itself, place a solid block on top, place a solid block on top of your repeater, walk it all the way back until it is 1 block shy of your observer. We are going to place a solid block catty corner from our corner solid block. And then we're going to start building out a water channel, which it'll make more sense when you see the full farm. But again, we're doing this now so we don't have to go into any tight spaces. Now, next to our repeater, we're going to place a solid block. We are going to place a solid block next to that and build up 1. And then we're going to build out towards the opposite side of the farm. Now, in 1 block shy of our rail, over here we ended 2 blocks shy. You could actually extend that out if you want, but it's not necessary. Now, with this general shape, we are going to place a bucket of water in this corner. Not at this moment, but later on. So the water will flow out, and then it will flow towards the outside of your farm. So we're going to elevate this up 1 block, and we're going to go all the way to our build border. And then we're going to make a channel for our water to flow down. Now, actually, Colin, if you want to go ahead and get a bucket of water ready, the outside corner above our rail is going to be an observer. So I'm going to go ahead and place the observer now. If you're on top of your water channel, you can actually just face directly at the rail and place it down. When we place water here, the water will flow and go to the outside of your farm. So go ahead, Colin, and place that water down. And because it has a maximum travel distance of 8 blocks, the water will stop right at the end of your farm. Now, that is the water stream out of the way. The rest of this is directly related to building out the farm and the redstone for the farm. Now, opposite of the observer, on the side with your lever, we are going to place a solid block next to our rail, build it up 1, and then go 1 block away from the observer. Now we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side, except we have a water stream here. So all we have to do here is place a solid block, just like that. Go to the opposite side of the farm, and opposite of the observer we placed into the rail, we are going to do the same thing here. At the end of your solid block, we are going to grab an observer and face it looking down into your rail. The redstone output should be facing up. If your farm looks like this, we are ready for the dispensing system for our first farm. Now, to get the dispensing system started, we are going to place a note block on top of both of our outer observers. We are going to face an observer into the note blocks. Colin, if you could do that side, thank you. Same thing on that side. Now, in front of both of our observers, we're going to place rails. And that is what those solid blocks are for. All right, now that you have your rails in place, we are not going to place rails on this side of the farm, but what we are going to do is we are going to start building out our observer clock for our dispensers. Again, this is very similar to a pickle farm. However, instead of dispensing from above your shifting floor, we are going to be dispensing from beneath it. So on the side opposite of the rails, we are going to place, Colin, if you could do this side, I will do this side. We are going to place an observer facing into the observer off of the note block with the redstone output looking at you. This is going to be a mirror image on both sides, so we are going to place a note block in front of that. We are going to place 1, 2, 3 observers off of the note block. We are going to turn off of the last observer. We're going to place an observer, followed by a solid block. We are going to go back 2 observers next to our note block, and we're going to place another observer with a solid block on front of that. It is going to be identical on the other side. It is just a mirror image. In between the 2 solid blocks, we are going to place our dispenser. Now, the easiest way to do it is to just crouch off of the side of the solid block and place it. Once you do that, the dispenser will be facing up. Make sure that you see the output facing up between the 2 solid blocks. Now, this is going to be slightly different at this point. On the side of the farm with your switch, your lever, we are going to place a glass block off of your observer. Now, this does need to be a glass block. If you see below the glass block, we have a redstone line. Whenever this observer fires, it is going to power whatever we have in front of it. Glass is a transparent block, so it cannot transmit a redstone signal down, which would completely break your farm. So make sure that you place a glass block here. At this point, you can continue to use glass blocks if you wish. However, I am just going to place solid blocks all the way until I reach the observer on the opposite side. On this side of the farm, you see Colin did not use a glass block, and that is because the redstone underneath it is connected to a solid block with a repeater, so there is no worries about powering this solid block. All right, this is going to be each module is going to have 2 dispensers, so we're going to do the same thing on the opposite side. However, if you are familiar with the Duck V3 or the Duck V4 pickle farms, you'll know that redstone does not play nicely in Donut. You cannot do a comparator clock or a redstone clock, observer clock in our case. You cannot do an observer clock that pulses more than 5 times per 10 game ticks. So a 5 redstone tick clock is as fast as you can make it, which we want to make it as fast as we can make it, but that makes the timing a little wonky. You have to do 3 pulses on one side and 2 on the other. I won't get too much into that, but off of the powered rail or the activator rail, we are going to place an observer looking into the rail with the redstone output facing towards the center of your farm. Make sure you can see the face looking on the outside. We're going to do that on both sides. You're going to place a second observer. We're going to hop back on our the center of our farm. We're going to place an observer facing the second observer. And then we're going to place a 4th and final observer with the redstone output looking towards the middle of your farm. Again, it is an exact mirror image. Now, just like we did on the first side, we are going to place solid blocks off of the end of our observers, just like that. And then, in between the corner of our solid blocks, we are going to place a dispenser, making sure that it is facing up. These are going to be identical as far as functionality. However, this is going to be powered by a 2-tick and then double pulse with a 4-tick. This is going to be powered by a 3-tick and then double pulsed with a 5-tick. It's just a little quirky, but that is the timing that you need to be aware of. Now, while we are down here, before we put I'm used to saying roof, I guess it would be a floor. Before we put the floor on top of our dispensing system, we're actually going to extend out a hopper line, 4 hoppers, until we are at the build border. So go ahead and place 4 hoppers, and do this on both sides. All right, now before we get to our floor, we are going to add 2 final buckets of water for our item collection. Now you'll see that right in the middle of the farm, we have our water, our item stream that flows in and out of our farm. To get items to this center water stream, we are actually going to place a sign directly above it. And on both sides, we are going to place a bucket of water. We are going to add a solid block on the side of the farm with the lever. We're going to place a solid block next to our note block. And then over here on the side of the farm where we have this gap, we are going to place a solid block next to our note block. And that's why we don't need the solid block underneath. Now, Colin, if you wouldn't mind adding water, we are going to place a water bucket on both sides. And as the items fall out of the farm, they will enter the item stream, they will drop down and exit the farm. Now, the rest of this is actually extremely easy, and it is virtually rinse and repeat. The first thing we're going to do is we're going to place another note block on top of our note blocks. Off of the side with our switch, we are going to place, or I guess we could do this on either side, but off of our note blocks, we are going to place 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 pistons. This is going to be a mirror image. Colin is going to do the same thing on his side. We are going to do the same thing on the opposite side of the farm. 5 more pistons. Now, this is where it does It doesn't matter too much. It'll just make it easier to place in the long run. But we're going to grab dirt. We're going to place 2 rows of dirt. And we're going to extend the dirt out off of the second and fourth piston, leaving a gap in the middle, and on the first and fifth piston, leaving a 2-block gap. Go ahead and fill in the dirt even further, leaving that 2-block gap. We are going to do the same thing all the way until we get to our 4th block, or I'm sorry, 3 blocks in between, and then on the 4th block we're going to do the same thing. We're going to place 2 rows of dirt, and then we're going to fill it in, leaving a 2-block gap, and then we're going to fill in dirt all the way until we are 1 block shy of our 2nd row of pistons. Alright, now if you want to make sure that you have all of your dirt in the proper position, you will have 2 blocks of dirt touching the piston. In the middle row, we are going to have a 2-block gap, followed by 3 blocks of dirt with another 2-block gap, followed by 2 blocks of dirt, and then a block gap between the pistons. Very similar to our Duck v3 pickle farm. However, instead of 1 coral block being bone mealed, we are going to have either crimson nylium or warped nylium. Now, it doesn't matter which one you choose if you're going to just sell it, if you're building this in a survival world, or you are interested in the colors that it produces. You can place 1 red and 1 green, or you could place 2 green, or you could place 2 red. It doesn't matter which one you choose to do. However, whichever one you place is what you're going to get the majority of. When you bone meal crimson nylium, you get crimson roots. If you bone meal warped nylium, you get warped roots. Now, depending on which color you choose to use is what farmable items you will get. When you bone meal the warped nylium, you will get warped roots. You will also get warped fungus. When you bone meal crimson nylium, you will get crimson roots, and you will get crimson fungus. But there is a small chance that when you bone meal warped nylium, you will get the occasional crimson mushroom, and the same is true if you bone meal crimson nylium. There is a small chance to get a warped mushroom, or a warped fungus, rather. Now, if you are wanting a mixture, you can mix and match it like we did here. However, since I am going to be selling these items, I want to have as few items as possible to deal with, because I'll probably be building a shulker loader. So the fewer items I have, the less item filters I will need. But that is entirely up to you. All right, now that we have our shifting floor, we are going to start building out a platform for our items to be contained in. I am going to place a solid block next to my note block, and I'm going to do this on both sides. And then I'm going to build a little border starting at the piston, and I'm going to go all the way 1 block past my shifting floor. On the side with your switch opposite of your collection system, I'm going to build 2 blocks. I'm then going to place a dispenser. Now on the side with the switch, I am going to place a second or another solid block. And then I'm going to go to the opposite side with the gap. I'm going to place solid blocks, and I'm going to build this out 1 block past my shifting floor. Same thing as the first side. I'm going to build out 2 blocks and then place a dispenser. Make sure that the dispenser is looking towards the inside of your farm. Now, the reason I did a solid block here is because we are going to be building up a redstone column on the side of the farm where you see the repeaters. We are going to crouch over the side. Now, you do need to be crouching when you do this, or you will advance the tick of the repeater. We don't want to do that. So crouch over the side and place down an observer. On top of the observer, we are going to place a note block. And on either side of the note block, we are going to place an observer with the arrow facing the solid block, or on the side without the solid block, the dispenser. We want to be powering the dispensers, so you cannot face it into the dispenser, or the arrow will be powering the note block. Actually, it won't be powering anything because nothing will trigger an update. So make sure that you are looking at the note block when you place down your observers. Do the same thing on the opposite side. The solid blocks will be directly across from each other, and the note blocks will be directly across from each other. At this point, we are going to grab our any wall of choice. I'm going to use cobblestone, but go ahead and add a wall in between your two shifting floor platforms, just like that. All right, now the next step is to go ahead and add some observers. Now on the first level, it is easier to do it after you built up your wall. So grab some observers, go right up to the side of your piston, place an observer with the face looking up at the sky or at the top of your base, and then add one observer on top of each piston until you reach your center row. Do the same thing on both sides, making sure that all of your observers are facing up. And on the opposite side of the farm, we are going to repeat the step one more time, making sure that we have an observer looking up into the sky and down into your base, all the way across. Now, in between your observers, we are going to place another observer facing the note block with the redstone output looking up. Do the same thing on both sides. All right, now that your farm looks like this, it is time to power these observers. The first thing we're going to do is on top of the observer with the redstone output facing up, we're going to place down a note block. On both sides of the note block, we are going to place down an observer, and we're going to do this on both sides. And if it looks familiar at the bottom, we are going to place down more powered rails or activator rails. This time, since there are multiple items that we need to power, we're just going to carry this all the way through the end of our observers, and we're going to do this on all four sides. You will notice that our farm is shifting, and that is okay. As soon as you turn the farm on, your shifting floor will return to the correct starting position. All right, that is actually your first two modules complete. The last step before we move on to the next layer is to place a bucket of water into each dispenser. So open up your dispenser and place one bucket of water. We are going to do this on all four sides. The water will be dispensed whenever the clock in our dropper counter reaches 0. It will pause the farm momentarily, dispense the water, pushing any fungus or root into our water stream and out into your storage system. Now, if you wanted to test this before building your next layer, again, it is ready to do so. The only thing you would have to do is click the note block to dispense the water. The water does need to be dispensed while the farm is off, and as soon as you turn the farm on, it will start a countdown, and then it will start shifting. Every time that dropper reaches 0, the farm will pause, and that water will flush out any of the items. And that process will continue over and over and over. All right, now before we get started on the next layer, I am going to go ahead and build up a row of hoppers all the way until I am even with my dispenser. I say all the way, I'm only going to place 2 hoppers because this entire module is only 3 blocks tall. The third block is going to be another row of hoppers into our dispenser. Before we can add that, we are going to go ahead and build out the same exact steps that we did on the first layer. Starting on the side opposite of your clock, we are going to place, Colin, if you wouldn't mind coming over here, doing that side for me. We are going to place an observer, note block, 3 observers, 1 observer off of the end, 1 observer off of the one next to the note block, and then a solid block in front of both of those observers that have the redstone output facing towards you. Just like before, we are going to place down a dispenser facing up, and that is the clock on the B side of the farm complete. Now this is where I used a glass block, but because we don't have redstone this time, I'm going to go ahead and just carry that solid block all the way to the end of my farm. Now, at this point, whenever we have a wall, items can get stuck on the ledge, even if the water is not directly flowing towards it. So we're going to place a solid block to make sure that all of the items flow down into our water stream. On the side of the farm with the rails, now on the first layer, it was easy to identify because we only had 2 rails. On the second layer, we are going to place on the second rail, we're going to place an observer facing the outside of your farm with the redstone output facing in. And we're going to place a second observer. We're going to hop up, place a third observer looking at the wall, or powering the wall, and then a fourth observer powering towards the center of the farm. Place a solid block in front of both and add a dispenser. It is a mirror image on the opposite side, so go ahead and do that. If your farm looks like this, you are ready for the next floor. Before we do that, we're going to go ahead and add our hoppers so we don't have to do that later. Now, one important thing to note that on each layer, the bone meal is going to be loaded from the top of the farm. So whenever you have a dispenser, the hopper on the same row as your dispenser needs to be facing towards the dispenser. The hoppers below it will pull bone meal. If you don't have your hopper facing towards the dispenser, everything will just flow down to the bottom and never make it. So make sure that you have your hopper facing in. Now, before we move on, we can actually add a note block on top of our note block. The pattern is going to start repeating itself. We are going to have an observer, 2 note blocks, observer, 2 note blocks, and we're going to have the same pattern all the way up as high as you want to build this. So whenever you have an observer, you can go ahead and add 2 note blocks on top. Let's see if Colin did the same thing on his side. Yes, he did. All right, let's go ahead and add our next row of pistons. Again, whenever you have an observer powering a note block in your tower, we're going to place a second note block on top. Next to our note block, we are going to place our pistons, and I have deleted mine, so let me grab some real quick. Place down 5 pistons, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Now I'm going to go ahead and add my observer for the next layer, so I can hop down and place my observer facing down into the piston. On the first layer, it was easy to reach from the bottom. On the second one, you'd have to jump. So I'm going to go ahead and place all of these from within the farm. So go ahead and just hop down. Crouch if it makes it easier. But make sure that each observer has the face looking up and the redstone output looking down into the piston. We are going to do this on all 4 of our sides for both modules. So 5 pistons, followed by 5 observers. And the B side's a little bit easier because you don't have to jump over the observer in the middle. Once your farm looks like this, we're going to go to the side of the farm with the lever. We are going to place down 2 rows of dirt. Remember, we're going to leave a 2-block gap, so we can go ahead and build that out now. And then we're going to continue this all the way, just like we did on the first layer. There's going to be 3 blocks in between the 2-block gaps, so go ahead and fill out that 2-block gap. And then finally we will leave a full 1-block gap on the side of the farm opposite of our switch. Again, this can be any color you want, but I'm going to go ahead and use red. That way there are fewer items that I have to sort later. Now to add our wall, I'm going to go ahead and add solid blocks, and I'm just going to build that all the way up. And then I'm going to place a wall all the way from one side of the farm to the other. I'm going to do the same thing that we did on the first layer, and that is to build a barrier right next to our observers. I'm going to extend it out 1 block and bring it in 2 blocks. So once again, build it out 1 block and bring it in 2 blocks. Off of the second block, we're going to place a dispenser on both sides. On the side closest to your lever, we are going to place down a solid block. And then we're going to do the same thing as before, add an observer, and then you can go ahead and do 2 note blocks because we're going to build a 3rd layer. place an observer into the note block powering your dispensers. All right. The next step is to go ahead and add 2 note blocks on our observers on the outside. And then we're going to place down an observer on both sides. And then I've deleted my rails once again. Add rails on top of your observers. Just like that. Alright, the only thing left to do on this layer is to add our water buckets again. So go ahead and add some water buckets into your dispensers. Alright, let's build layer number 3. The next thing we're going to do, the same thing that we did on the second layer. We are going to build up our hoppers until it is even with our dispenser. And that's just when you're building in survival. You can reach it easier. You can technically do that later, but it's just easier to do it now. Once you have added your hoppers, we are going to start on the next layer. Before we do that, I always like to make sure that my water is dispensed. So I'm just going to click the note block between the 2 observers. Again, when the farm is off, your water needs to be dispensed. That way, any items that are remaining when you turn your farm off, that they do go into your collection system. Okay, layer 3. We're going to start with the dispenser system below our floor. We're going to add an observer, a note block, 3 observers. Off of the first and third observer, we're going to place another observer with a solid block on both sides with the redstone output. Dispenser facing up, and we are done with side B. Side A, we are going to go ahead and add our 2 observers with our solid block. Place a 3rd observer, a 4th observer with a solid block, and then add your dispenser in between the 2 solid blocks. It is going to be the same on both sides. It will just be mirrored, and again, it will be the same for all modules that you choose to build. This is not limited to 3 modules. You can extend it much higher. However, I am going to go ahead and stop at 3 modules, but you will just follow this step over and over and over. All right, now the next step, this is technically not required probably, but I always connect the 2 sides together, 1 block shy of our wall. Whenever you break a farmable item with a shifting floor, sometimes those items do pop up, and sometimes they can get caught on top of your wall. So this just provides a little extra layer of protection, but it isn't necessarily required. And that is the redstone for layer 3. Let's go ahead and add our pistons once again. We are going to add those to the side of our note blocks. 5 pistons on all 4 sides for both modules. Once you have your 2 pistons, we are going to go ahead and jump on top of our piston and add our observer. And then we are going to place an observer facing down into the first piston, hop down, and add 1 observer on top of each of the pistons. And rinse and repeat. We're going to do the same steps as we did on the second layer. We're going to add our dirt. Now this is the same pattern as before. However, I failed to mention the reason we are only doing 2 blocks of Nylium is as the floor shifts back and forth, the dispenser is going to bone meal whichever block is above it. So the first pulse is going to dispense on 1 Nylium block. The second pulse is going to dispense on the second Nylium block. Now, whenever you bone meal Nylium, the roots will spread to a dirt block or other variants of Nylium. So if you do a crimson, it will spread to warped and vice versa. So we just use the dirt as a cheaper way to build this. However, if you had it available, you could build the entire shifting floor out of Nylium, so you don't have to worry about counting out those gaps. But I just I think it looks neat. And the other benefit of having two different colors, if your farm is not dispensing on both blocks, you can tell which side is not firing based on the color that you are not getting. So that's actually one of the ways we were troubleshooting this farm when we were designing it. Let's go ahead and build out our barrier, once again extending out 1 block past our shifting floor, and then 2 blocks in. Do this on both sides. Add your dispensers. Now Colin has already added the center wall, but make sure that you have a solid block all the way up on that column or items will get stuck. Place your solid block on the side closest to your switch. Crouch over the edge, place an observer, and a note block. Place an observer on both sides. And we are just about done with our third layer. Alright, since this is our third layer, we do not need to extend the water dispensing note block an additional block. And we do not need to add 2 note blocks, but we do need 1 extra note block so we can keep the timing correct. So add your note block on the observer even with your wall, with 2 observers looking into it. Finish off your rails for your shifting floor. And your top layer is complete. The only thing left to do, again, is to add those buckets of water. So let's go ahead and do that now. Add 1 bucket of water into each dispenser. And then when you are done with the layer, again, I always click the note block to make sure that my water is dispensed. All right, now that we have our water dispensed, we are going to hop down on top of our hoppers for layer 2. We're going to crouch and place some hoppers into the dispenser. Actually, we probably should have done that first because you are going to need a temporary block or something. But go ahead and add your hoppers into your dispensers. And then build up those hoppers until they are even with the top dispenser. Do this on all 4 sides if I can stop falling off the farm. Now at this point we're going to leave it up to you. We will probably expand upon this tutorial in a later video, but for now we're going to go ahead and just place a couple of double chests on top of the hopper and the dispensers just to give you a place to add bone meal. Once you have your chests in place, I can't stand the sound of note blocks. I always place a solid block on top of my note blocks just to keep them silent. You don't have to do that. But what I do recommend you doing is, once again, items can pop off and land on top of your wall. So go ahead and just add the upper platform that we have been doing. This time we don't have observers, so we're just going to carry this all the way across. This is next to our wall. I'm also going to extend this around and elevate everything up 1 block. Again, that's just to make sure that no items pop out of the farm. It isn't necessarily required. You may lose an item here or there, but let's try to keep this lossless. So by adding that second layer, you should keep all of those items contained in your farm. If you planned on expanding more than 3 modules, as you can see, this thing is extremely tiny. With just 3 modules tall, with the clock on the bottom, and the extra block on top of the note block to keep it silent, this farm is only 13 blocks tall. That does include the output of our item stream. We don't even need to dig down to add our soul sand because we left it elevated up 1 block. So inside of a 13 by 16 by 17 build area, you now have a total of 12 fungus farms. Each module has 2 farms, and we have built 6 modules. Alright, and that is it. Again, this is a very small farm. You can expand this extremely high. With as short as this farm is, you could go up several layers. Each layer is only going to add an additional 3 blocks, so build this thing as tall as you want. Let us know what type of add-ons you'd like to see for this farm, if you'd like to see us expand it, add storage, add a crafter, you name it, and we will try to build it. We have went ahead and loaded up the farm behind us with a bunch of bone meal so we can show you it running. Hopefully you've already seen our YouTube short, which kind of showcased that already, but join our Discord if you have any questions. There will be a link in the description. And as always, thank you for watching. I am CD3 Daddy.
And I am C3DG Minecraft.
And we will see you in the next video.